In the quiet suburban development of Maplewood, Mike Patterson, a builder known for his impeccable work and his signature red MAGA cap, stepped into the local hardware store to pick up some much-needed supplies for the new community park. It was supposed to be a quick trip: nails, timber, maybe a coffee from the stand by the checkout. Instead, it became the talk of the town. As Mike strolled in, the store's manager, Linda, froze mid-sentence while scolding a stock boy about misplaced inventory. Her eyes locked on the bright red cap, the words, "Make America Great Again," boldly embroidered across the front. Her face tightened like she'd just bitten into a lemon. "That's not the kind of symbol we welcome here," Linda declared, her voice louder than necessary. Heads turned, and a murmur rippled through the store. Mike, unfazed, adjusted the clipboard under his arm and gave a polite nod. "Morning. I'm here for nails and timber, not a political debate." But Linda wasn't one to let a moment like this pass. She leaned forward, her arms crossing dramatically, her voice laced with exaggerated disdain. "You think you can just waltz in here flaunting that? It's offensive to me and my customers." Mike's calm demeanor didn't waver. He glanced around at the other customers, most of whom were now pretending to study screws or paint cans while sneaking glances at their phones. "I don't see anyone offended," he replied with a smirk. "Seems like just you." This only fueled Linda's fire. "People like you," she hissed, her voice climbing an octave, "think you can walk into any space and make others uncomfortable." "People like me?" Mike raised an eyebrow, his tone sharp yet amused. "People who build parks for communities, or people who don't scream at strangers over hats?" The crowd was now fully invested. A young man whispered, "This is better than Netflix." Linda, visibly flustered, pointed at the door. "If you're not leaving, I'll make sure you do. We don't need your kind here." Mike sighed and collected his clipboard. "Well, Linda, if a hat's this upsetting, you might want to reevaluate your priorities. Good luck with that." As he walked out, the room burst into murmurs. Phones went down and someone muttered, "She's going viral for sure." Determined not to back down, Mike grabbed the nails and timber he came for and headed toward the register. The murmurs of the onlookers grew louder as Linda stormed out from behind the counter like a hawk descending on its prey. Her finger jabbed the air in Mike's direction, her voice ringing out across the store. "I told you to leave!" she barked. "You're banned from this store!" Mike paused, glancing over his shoulder. "Banned? For shopping? That's a new one." By now, the younger cashier was frozen in place, hands hovering over the register, unsure whether to ring up the items or sprint for cover. Linda's face reddened as she leaned toward him. "If you don't leave immediately, I'll call the police." Mike raised an eyebrow, his tone as calm as ever. "All this over a hat? What's next? A warrant for wearing plaid?" The crowd couldn't hold back their whispers. A man near the paint aisle whispered to his companion, "This is better than the Super Bowl halftime show." Linda, undeterred, whipped out her phone. "Fine, if you won't listen, I'll handle this myself. 911? Yes, we have a disturbance here at the store. A man is causing a scene." "By buying lumber," Mike added helpfully, loud enough for everyone to hear. Moments later, as Mike calmly walked toward the door, his items tucked under one arm, he addressed the crowd with a wry smile. "Thanks for the hospitality, folks. I'll be sure to spread the word about this excellent customer service." Outside, the unmistakable sound of sirens echoed through the parking lot. Two police officers stepped out of their cruiser, looking more confused than concerned. Linda, practically vibrating with righteous indignation, rushed toward them. "This man," she started, pointing at Mike like he'd just robbed the place, "was wearing provocative attire and disrupting my store." One of the officers raised an eyebrow, glancing at Mike's hat and then back at Linda. "Wearing a hat is a disruption?" Mike gave a small shrug. "Apparently, fashion choices are a felony now." The second officer chuckled under his breath. "Ma'am," he said dryly, "this is not what we call an emergency." Linda's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Mike, ever composed, tipped his hat to the officers. "Gentlemen, I'll leave peacefully. Wouldn't want to escalate things." The officers exchanged a glance, and the younger one muttered, "Well, that's the first hat crime I've ever heard of." The crowd erupted in quiet laughter as Mike walked away, leaving Linda fuming and the police visibly unimpressed. The incident didn't die quietly. Overnight, a video captured by a curious bystander spread across social media like wildfire. It showed Mike Patterson standing cool and composed, his red MAGA hat firmly in place, while Linda's face contorted with frustration as she called the police. The caption read, "Builder banned for a hat. Free expression or overreaction?" It wasn't long before the hashtags #Hatgate and #Build It Mike were trending, igniting heated debates. By morning, the hardware store's parking lot buzzed with activity. Journalists hovered by their vans and locals gathered, phones ready to capture the next act of the drama. Linda, oblivious to the storm brewing outside, was sipping her coffee at the counter, scrolling through customer complaints, pouring into the store's social media page. The rumble of a black SUV cut through the hum of the crowd. Heads turned as the vehicle rolled to a stop. Out stepped former President Donald Trump, his trademark red MAGA hat catching the sunlight. He adjusted his cufflinks, his grin widening as he surveyed the spectacle. A wave of whispers swept through the crowd like a breeze. "Is that Trump?" Linda froze mid-sip. Her coffee cup slipped from her hand, spilling onto the counter, but she didn't notice. Trump strolled into the store, cameras flashing, and stopped in front of her. "I heard about the little scene yesterday," he began, his voice carrying an unmistakable charisma. "Mike Patterson, one of my biggest donors and a damn fine builder. And from what I saw, you didn't treat him too kindly." Linda's face drained of color. "Mr. President, I didn't realize." Trump held up a hand, silencing her. "Didn't realize what? That a hat doesn't make a man? That respect isn't conditional?" He shook his head, mock disappointment dripping from his tone. "Sad," Linda stammered, her hands trembling. It's just store policy, sir." "Store policy?" Trump interjected, a wry smile playing on his lips. "Maybe you should reconsider that. In fact," he gestured grandly toward the parking lot, "I hear there's a new hardware store opening soon, courtesy of Mike." The crowd erupted in cheers and laughter, cameras capturing Linda's stunned expression as Trump exited, tossing a final, "Good luck, Linda," over his shoulder. Outside, Mike stood leaning casually against a truck, watching the spectacle unfold with a smirk. "Well," he quipped to the crowd, "guess I've got a lot of lumber to move into my new store." The crowd roared, and Linda's face said it all. She knew her chapter was closing. The fallout was swift. Linda faced backlash, not just from social media, but from her own corporate office, which issued an apology to Mike. The video continued to circulate, turning Mike into a local hero and a symbol of resilience. Trump's public endorsement only added to the attention. Linda was demoted, and the store announced sensitivity training for its staff. Meanwhile, Mike opened his own supply store down the street, proudly displaying his MAGA cap in the window. On opening day, the line stretched around the block. As customers congratulated Mike, he smiled and said, "It's not about the hat, it's about standing up for what's right." The crowd cheered as Mike raised the hammer high above his head. "Now let's build something great,"